All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the For the Cat podcast. In this episode, we're going to be hitting the Warriors versus Raptors game that just happened, and the Warriors got straight BTA'd. I mean, we gave up 145 points, and as a defensive team, that is diabolical. And am I surprised? Not really, just because the Toronto Raptors are one of those teams that are on that list that I've been talking about of teams that are a bad matchup for the Warriors. The Warriors, over the last few years, have ran into teams that have similar traits that give the Warriors a ton of issues. Toronto is on that list. Toronto has all the size, the length, the athleticism, and with a team like the Warriors that have an influx of guards, that's obviously going to be an issue. And when I speak about the Warriors defense, I typically speak about their weaknesses in terms of personnel. And when I say personnel, I'm talking about individual defense. I'm talking about their ability to guard quick players in space. I'm talking about their ability to guard bigger players and wall them up in the post. I'm talking about, just being able to stop good offensive players in the league. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about individual defensive personnel. And as much of an issue as that really is, arguably something that's an even bigger issue is the defensive execution, like the basic stuff in basketball. And when I'm talking about the basic stuff, I'm talking about things like switching properly. I'm talking about closing out to shooters properly. I'm talking about throwing even extra closeouts, defending in rotation. Another one is just making sure that you track shooters off the ball. All of these basic stuff in basketball, it doesn't require any sort of extraordinary skill. It requires just attention to detail and being engaged into the game. I often criticize how a lot of the Warriors players, they love to have their heels to the floor, meaning their feet are stuck to the ground and they're not really necessarily in a position where they're ready to move. Oftentimes, how many times do you feel like the Warriors are late to shooters or like they're late to closeouts? And then when you factor in the fact that they're small, they're like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" guys. Our center, who's Draymond, he's like 6'6". Like these guys that are closing out to shooters, they're tiny. And it's completely different to a guy that's 6'7", 6'8", that's closing out to you. And every other team in the league, they have that. The Warriors, they don't. So when you factor in the fact that they have poor attention to detail and they have a lack of size where they can't really take up a whole lot of space on the court, a lot of the basic defensive stuff just becomes a bigger problem than it needs to be. And then something that's even worse that I've always talked about is the transition defense. The transition defense is the one thing that they cannot fix at all. They can fix their defensive weaknesses by being a little more engaged, by coming up with a better scheme. Those are things that can help the issue. Of course, they can't completely get rid of it, but they can help the situation. The transition defense, it's completely, to quote Shams, fractured beyond repair. There are guys that just are not interested in running back on defense. And when you think about how they're already small and they have a small margin of error, them not running back on defense, even one person just not doing their job and not running back on defense, it's a bigger problem for them relative to other teams in the league. And one of the ways that they can stop that is to just stop crashing the glass. Because when you think about it, a lot of their smaller players are constantly crashing the glass. And it's good that they're playing with high motor. It's good that they're engaging into the margins of the game where they can earn extra opportunities for their team. However, it really doesn't pay off because they don't get the rebound. They're too small to be able to go and secure an offensive rebound consistently. These are 6'3", 6'4" guys that are trying to crash the glass, but they're not going to necessarily secure the rebound. They're going to tap the ball to an open teammate, or they're going to try to stop a transition break or something, but they're not going to secure an extra possession. So because of that, that guy's now out of the play, and now you have an automatic 5-on-4, 4-on-3 situation going down the floor, and because you don't have the size, you don't have the athleticism, you don't have the ability to recover from your mistakes. So they need to stop crashing the glass. Guys like Will Richard, Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, Buddy, Guy Santos, all of these guys that love to crash the glass, Gary Payton II, they need to stop. They need to stop crashing the glass because it's putting their team in positions where they can't sustain. So the transition defense, they need to be more they need to be more meticulous on that end, because they're not helping themselves at all. Like, a lot of their points, like especially Emmanuel Quickley, the Toronto Raptors are the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. Emmanuel Quickley had 6 threes in this game. How do you think he got those 6 threes? They were wide open in transition where guys weren't coming back and didn't even bother to get a hand up. And Bob Fitzgerald, who's one of the Warriors' main broadcasters, he'll try to make you believe that teams have this insane shooting luck when they play the Warriors, but in reality, when you're looking at the type of looks that they're taking, they're clean looks. And one of the reasons, or the reason why the Toronto Raptors are the quote-unquote the worst shooting team in the league, is because against 29 or 28 other teams in the league, those other teams defend them like they're a real basketball team. Whereas us, we defend them like they're a G League team, and they can take advantage of it. So, whenever teams play the Warriors, even though they can be a bad jump shooting team, they automatically turn into this elite jump shooting team because we just don't guard them with the right attention to detail. And then again, on top of that, you factor in the size and the lack of athleticism, it becomes a bigger problem. And then guys like Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, they're just too big, too strong for our little guards. I mean, Brandon Ingram, we don't have a matchup for him. Our longest and most viable matchup for Brandon Ingram is Moses Moody. And Moses Moody, he can't guard. He can't guard speedy guards in space. And he certainly can't guard Brandon Ingram, who can pretty much get his shot off against anybody. Like Brandon Ingram, he's in that same class of tough shot makers among everyone else in the NBA. He has that high release point. He gets to his spots efficiently, and he can just rise up over anybody in the league. And if we're a team that already has no athleticism, no long players, no wings, etc., how do you think we're going to be able to stop a guy like that? Scotty Barnes, he's ultra strong. Everybody in the league that has competed against Scotty Barnes, they praise his strength and athleticism. And he was getting free buckets in transition. Like, there were times where he was just like not even cutting to the rim. He was just running down the floor, and because everybody is so small, they just threw it over the top to him, and he just ran through everybody straight to the rim. And that's because, again, the Warriors are small. And then now just flipping it over to the offense, I just felt like everybody was deflated. And rightfully so. Now we got the news that Jimmy Butler is officially out with an ACL injury. I'm not surprised. I had some speculation. I didn't have zero hope that it wasn't going to be something other than an ACL, but with the way that he came down with his knee coming inward, as a basketball fan, if you've seen enough ACL tears, you would have some sort of an idea. And the way he just came down and started screaming and holding his knee, you would likely have an idea that it was a catastrophic injury. And indeed, Shams reported that Jimmy Butler is going to be out for the rest of the season and out next year. It's going to be a long recovery for him. I pray that it's going to be a speedy recovery for him, and that his career is not going to that's not going to be in jeopardy. We're going to speak a little bit about that later on, but to just go back to the game, the offense, in my opinion, Steph, his head wasn't in the game. He was missing a lot of those backdoor layups that he normally makes, and I felt like he was forcing a lot of tough 3-point looks. And obviously it's Steph. You never really question his shot selection just because he's the greatest shooter of all time. However, a lot of the shots that he was taking, I didn't like it because he wasn't in rhythm. A lot of those like early deep clock type of threes, you only want him to take those shots if he's like on a heater. Like if he's making a couple backdoor layups, he's roasting people off the dribble, he's hitting step back threes. Okay, now you can take some early clock deep threes that you normally would take. However, if you're not in a rhythm, if you're not essentially playing well, you shouldn't be taking those type of shots. And I felt like he was one of the reasons why the Warriors had bad energy to start the game. Him, including Draymond, I think they just didn't have enough time to process the Jimmy injury, because the Jimmy injury, it puts them out of championship contention fully. Before, they had a puncher's chance to win the title if they had the right pieces around them. Now Jimmy Butler is gone and they're back to pre-Jimmy hoops. And pre-Jimmy hoops is looking like it's some of the most diabolical stuff we've ever seen. And, I'm going to touch on that later on in the podcast, but that's something else that I want to transition into. So the lineups out there, the lineups, they throw me for a loop because, I get we're a small team, but I feel like Steve Kerr doesn't make the situation better by just playing small guys together. Like, there were so many 4-guard lineups out there with Melly, Buddy, Will, and Pods. That lineup's not doing anything on both ends of the floor. And when you pair them up with Draymond or QP, I mean, what can they achieve on both ends of the floor? Genuinely. Like, from a basketball perspective, they can't do anything. Offensively, they don't have enough size. They don't have a lot of physical presence to be able to get to the rim or be able to score down at the block. They need a post presence in order to be able to play some type of motion offense. But because they don't have that, now what are they going to do? And then on defense, they're too small. They're too unathletic. They don't have any chemistry with each other. And when I'm looking at those lineups, it's reminding me of the lineups that Steve Kerr was playing in 2023. Like, do you remember when we had Steph, Clay, JP, Dante DiVincenzo, Ty Jerome, and like Ryan Rollins on the team? Do you guys remember that? There were times where Steve Kerr would play Steph, Clay, Jordan Poole, and like Dante at the same time. And it was ridiculous. It was like, we don't have any size and teams can easily just mash on that. So like these lineups, it's just crazy. And like the only times I felt like we had any stability or momentum in the game was when we played lineups that included Guy Santos and Jonathan Kuminga into the game. Those lineups did very well, especially against a team like Toronto. We need those big lineups. And I get like you're down a wing player. However, you got to make sure you're in the best situation to compete. You can't just add gasoline to the fire. Like, you got to do something to make sure that you are in position to win the game. And I think this is a good transition into what I want to talk about next, which is Jonathan Kuminga. So Kuminga got minutes in this game. He's back into the rotation, and he scored 20 points in 21 minutes. It's what you want from him coming off of what I think it's like 16 games where he didn't play. And I thought he looked good. He looked good from not playing for a certain amount of time. And I thought it was a great sign to see that he was aggressive early, because, when you don't play for that long and you don't essentially play any meaningful minutes for a whole month or so, as a young player, it's very easy for you to step into the game and essentially not be bought in, because Jonathan Kuminga, he doesn't have any reason to go out there and play hard or play efficiently for the Warriors. Like, he could go out there and be on some BS, and honestly, you can't even really blame him, because, anybody in his position, they would have some sort of enmity towards Steve Kerr and the coaching staff. But for him to come out the way that he did, to attack the rim and get to his spots and look to be aggressive in his minutes, I think that's a great sign. I think that's a sign that despite the lack of agreement, despite all of the trade talk rumors, he is still focusing on the present. He's still focusing on things that he can control, and it's that, he's still on the Warriors. Like, there's all these discussions about where he might end up, but I think he's focusing on where he is now, and the truth is that he's still on the Warriors. And if he's on the Warriors, he's got to be a professional on an NBA team, and he did exactly just that. And the Warriors needed what he brought to the table, which was post presence and rim pressure. Melly can provide some rim pressure. At times, Buddy Hield has actually been providing some really good rim pressure as well. Pods has been looking to attack the rim, and I think that's the right mindset. However, JK, he's a natural rim attacker. That's where his game is predicated off of. Like, he's not no jump shooter. He's not a smooth ball handler. He's not a powerhouse. He's a guy that relentlessly attacks the rim. And he did a good job of doing that. And then he had a couple of and ones where he was seeking for the contact, and he made a lot of tough shots. And I thought that was a very, very good sign. I thought, they always say stay ready when you're not in the rotation, and I felt like he did a good job staying ready. But one of the issues that I've seen, that I continuously see with his game, and I saw it twice last night, was that his handle is still an issue. He's like 6'7", 6'8". He wants to be a main option type of player. However, in previous podcasts, I've criticized his skill as a basketball player, meaning his foundational skills, his ability to handle the ball, his ability to shoot the ball, his ability to make open passes, his ability to read the game. It's not exactly there. He's talented. When people say Jonathan Kuminga is talented, they're talking about his athleticism. His athleticism alone is carrying him to 20 points a game. He had an efficient 20 off of his athleticism alone. So based off of that, he is a player that has upside. That's why I say he's a player that has upside, because his athleticism alone can just make him more than just a role player. It's just what his upside exactly is, we don't know that. However, going back to his handle, there's times where he pushes the ball in transition, but whenever he tries to stop on a dime, he loses the ball easily. His handle is too loose in the case where he's trying to change directions, and because his handle is not tight, he's moving quicker than the ball. And that's an area he needs to fix. You can't be a superstar and not be able to handle the ball, because for your archetype, if you want to be a star, you have to be able to handle the ball. You have to be able to play in space. You have to be able to beat guys off the dribble. And if you can't do that, then what else can you do? Because your post-up game, it's a complementary to what you do best, which is your rim pressure game. But if you can't handle the ball, if you fumble the ball going to the basket, that's an issue that coaches are not going to tolerate. And that's one of the reasons why Steve Kerr took him out of the rotation. Because, in the period before he essentially got taken out of the rotation, he was fumbling the ball a lot. And he's in year 5. You got to think about that. And for the people that are saying, oh, even though he's in year 5, he didn't get a whole lot of minutes. Listen, Jonathan Kuminga, he's in year 5 as a player that has played some type of meaningful minutes. He might not get the same type of minutes as other young players in the league. However, he has played in meaningful minutes in his career. He might not have the same type of leash. He might not have the same type of freedom from his coach. However, it's not like he's somebody that hasn't played at all. It's the ratio isn't so slanted towards other young players in the league that have gotten better opportunities compared to him. These are mistakes that you can't continue to make in year 5. And more minutes is not going to help that. Giving a young player more minutes in year 5 that's lacking in some foundational skills is not going to help the issue. Eric Spoelstra, he said it the best. He's an NBA coach that has been saying what I've been saying, and it's the fact that if you don't play well in your minutes, you're not going to get more minutes. He was talking about that with Kel'el Ware. And it's so simple. If you don't play well in your minutes, why would a coach give you more minutes on an NBA team? It just makes no sense. So now when you're looking at Jonathan Kuminga, could he have more freedom because Jimmy Butler's out? Because they're not going to reliably get any offensive firepower from anyone else besides Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga is the only guy that's willing to go and get his own offense. Everyone else is happy to just play as a connector. But if you're looking to find somebody that can replace replace what Jimmy Butler brought to the team, the closest person right now is Jonathan Kuminga, and you're gonna have to work with that. So that's the dynamic here. However, we know that Jonathan Kuminga views himself in this way, in the sense that he wants to be a star player and a main option player on the team. However, we already know Steve Kerr doesn't view him that way. He doesn't think that Jonathan Kuminga should be operated this way. He wants him to play as a role player, as a system type of player. However, if Jonathan Kuminga, if he has nights where he doesn't score the basketball, now what do we do? Because if he's going to hang his hat on the scoring end, but he has issues doing everything else, like rebounding, defending, making extra passes, getting off the ball, etc., if he's not going to do any of that, it's going to drive Steve Kerr crazy. So it becomes, even though it can be a solution to play Kuminga more, it can potentially be an even messier situation, because we already know how Steve Kerr feels about Jonathan Kuminga. So now this transitions into what I want to speak about for my last section, which is the fact that the Warriors need to face the truth about where their roster is at right now. Because, like I said earlier, Jimmy Butler being out of the picture, it takes them out of championship contention. So now what do you do? Because before, the plan was you get another piece, you get another third option type of player, you get either more size, more athleticism, and you make a run for the championship this year. However, now you're missing Jimmy Butler. What do? Do you keep Jonathan Kuminga and try to make him buy in and work with him to keep your season afloat? Or do you still try to make a big trade and get another star player to play alongside Steph Curry and not have another elite Steph season go to waste? Or do you make micro trades and try to make the roster better, but it's not exactly going to move the needle? Whatever the option is, they need to be honest, because for me, I view this in two ways. Because number one, I need to get this off my chest. This pre-Jimmy Hoops product that the Warriors are having right now, it's diabolical. Like, I just can't watch this team play basketball. Like, it's just, they're in the same tier as the Utah Jazz. They're in the same tier as the Charlotte Hornets, or maybe they're even worse. Like, without Jimmy Butler, they're going to barely stay afloat as a play-in team. So I get not wanting to make any moves if Jimmy Butler is out this season. However, you still have another all-time great on your team that's playing great basketball. So for me, you have to either make one of two decisions. You have to A, trade Steph and fire up the tank, or B, you make some type of micro trades. Like, you package up some of your guard rotation and get more wings and get more athleticism on your team. Because this product alone, it's damn near unwatchable. Like, there's so many guards on the team that you're watching the game and it's like, is this even a real basketball team? Is this a team that is even looking to do anything? Like, you would already think that the team is tanking, and all it took was just Jimmy Butler being out. It's crazy. So for the front office, like, what do? I think it wouldn't be a bad move if you wanted to trade Steph, because Steph doesn't deserve this. He's 37, he's going to be 38, and he's playing great basketball for the most part. You know, there's been some inconsistencies. You know, that's going to come with his age. That's going to come with the way he plays the game. However, again, you got to think about where he's at right now and where his career can potentially end up in the next few years, because we already know he doesn't have a whole lot of time. It's going to be a shame to have him play another NBA season where he's playing meaningless basketball. And, you know, the Warriors, they've been obsessed with this idea of, you know, building after Steph. So now they pretty much have a golden opportunity to do that. You trade Steph away to a contending team, you'll get some draft compensation back, you might get some really good veteran role players that can be a part of your long-term plans. You can get some really good young and talented players that can be developed. And on top of that, you got to think about how this is Steve Kerr's last year contractually for the Warriors. And given everything that has happened, it's very likely that Steve Kerr won't be back. Like, there's literally a golden opportunity for the front office to ditch the Steph Curry era and buy into the second timeline. And although it seems disingenuous because you have an all-time great that can realistically lead and bring you another championship, do you even want to do that? Like, let's be honest. Do the Warriors front office want to risk it? Because they're stingy about their picks. They're not just going to give away their picks if they feel like they're not going to get a player in return that's on the same caliber as Giannis. So, the Warriors, they have to be honest with themselves. And then on top of that, if we're looking at the other side, if you do want to keep Steph, you can't have him hoop with this team. You just can't. Like, there's too many players that cannot help him win. You got to get some real players on the team that's going to make you look like a basketball team. Like what we got going on right now, like Buddy Hield dropped 25 points, and kudos to him, but you can't rely on Buddy Hield. You can't. I'm sorry if I sound like a hater, but it's just the truth. The guy has too many inconsistencies, too many brain fart type of possessions where you just can't rely on him. Sure, he's a great vibes guy. He's a great energy guy. He's a great locker room guy. You love him. I get that. However, you got to be honest. You got to be honest, and you only have about 14, 15 days to figure it out. And I think you have to, I think these are the only two options for the Warriors. You either trade Steph or you still make a trade, but it's not going to be as big of a trade. You're probably going to like send Buddy Hield for like another wing or something like that. I think you still need to make a move just because if you don't want to get off of Jimmy Butler's contract and you're still banking on the fact that if he's going to come back, he's still going to be a part of your franchise and a core piece moving forward, you can't have him come back to the same exact team because the initial plan was that if he didn't get injured, you would still make a trade and get another piece for the team to contend. So whatever the decision is, they're going to have to make it quick and they're going to have to be honest with themselves. All right, so one last thing that I want to talk about is Mike Dunleavy's comments. Now, Mike Dunleavy, he was funny yesterday. He had a quote that pretty much shook up Warriors Twitter, and he was talking about Jonathan Kuminga's trade, essentially him wanting out of Golden State, and he had a quote that was funny. He said, in order for there to be a demand, there needs to be demand. That's what he's saying. And essentially he's saying that, for you to want out, there's got to be teams that want you. And, people were confused about that. They were like, well, if that's the case, then why are you not playing him to where his value can be increased and that can attract more teams? And I think what Mike is saying is that if you're so good to the point where you think every other team in the league wants you, why haven't we got offers where we felt like we wanted something that we want for you in return? Meaning like they're not getting the offers that they want. And JK, him viewing himself so highly as a player, if he's really that kind of player, why haven't they gotten any high value offers in return is what I think he's trying to say, if that makes any sense. And I think, it's no secret that the Warriors, they don't want to entertain that Sacramento Kings offer. Sacramento Kings, they're the only team that wants JK. They're the only team that has publicly came out and said that they'll trade and pursue JK on their team. However, there's not really anybody on their team that we would want. But now that Jimmy Butler is gone, do you go for a guy like DeRozan? DeRozan, I think, can help because he provides that secondary shot creation. He's not the same type of playmaker as Jimmy. He's not the same type of defender. He's not the same type of grifter. However, in terms of pure scoring as like a secondary scorer, I think DeRozan is a little bit better than Jimmy. Jimmy might be a better complete offensive player compared to DeRozan. However, DeRozan has some really great shot making ability. He's gonna, on nights where he has it, he's going to attract a lot of attention from the defense. And that's going to make make life easier for a lot of the role players on our team. Guys like Moses, guys like Will, guys like Pods that fish off of spot up opportunities. DeMar DeRozan, he's going to be that guy that's going to get them those type of shots. And then on top of that, their play styles are closely similar. Jimmy gets more to the rim, but DeRozan, he operates in the mid post as well. And at times, he can also operate as your secondary ball handler. So if the Warriors go get DeRozan, I don't think it's entirely a bad idea. However, you're going to have to get off of Jimmy's contract to be able to get him. Unless you somehow don't, and you try to package up JK and, another player or two in draft compensation. But is that worth it? So it's a really tough decision right now for the Warriors front office. However, I think, a separation should be due between the Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga, because there's a lot of enmity. There's a lot of bad blood. Mike Dunleavy Jr., he's now unhinged towards the press about Jonathan Kuminga. We already know Steve Kerr has been on this type of timing. So where this ends up in the next couple of days or the next week or two is going to be very interesting. But like I said, whatever it is, they're going to have to be honest with themselves, and they're going to have to make a move quick. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. I'll have more coming soon. I'll have more podcast of games coming soon as well. I know I've been saying that for many podcast episodes now, but I'm working on it. I'll get it out soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Peace.